Hey there, YouTubers. Kitten Hoarder here, and you're watching Session Report, the show that takes you to the gamer's table to share in the surprises that come out during play. And today we are going to be playing Paperback, which is a very interesting, very cool hybrid game. It's a hybrid between a deck building game like Dominion or Ascension or one of those, actually more along the lines of Dominion, and a word game like Scrabble, or actually one of my favorite word games, a very lesser known one, Prolix, which is by Gil Hova, who designed the networks. I'm getting way off topic, but we're going to be playing Paperback, which is a very cool game by Tim Fowers, who's a very cool designer. It comes in a very cool box. It looks like a stack of books. It looks great on your bookshelf. And it's got some very cool art, and we're going to be having a very cool time of it, I think. So let me just first explain what I'm doing here. I would not normally play a game like this solo. It's a word game. I've played Prolix solo. It's actually pretty good, but word games tend to feel a little bit more like crossword puzzles when you're playing them solo. They're not a whole lot of fun. But two things. First, this is a very cool design that, as I said, it mixes these elements of deck building with elements of word games. So even if you're not a fan of word games, but maybe other people in your family or in your friend group are, but you're a big fan of deck builders, you might be able to bridge the gap with this. Also makes it a little bit more fun to play solo. Also, there's a cooperative mode in the rulebook. It doesn't mention solo play, and I think it probably is a little bit better for an actual group, but there's really no reason you can't play this cooperative mode exactly as it's written in the rulebook just by doing 2 decks of cards solo. And there are also a lot of variants on Board Game Geek where people have tried to tweak the difficulty level to play it solo. So all of those are good reasons to play this game solitaire. But I think the biggest reason is because it being a word game, I wanted to show you something that I love to do in any word game. And that's sort of to make it a hybrid. I guess this would be a 3-way hybrid, like a Hydra, I guess, between a word game and a storytelling game. So I wanted to show you one of the things that I think is a lot of fun. I try to inject this into every word game I play, and we're going to do it with this solo playthrough. And I think this is a perfect sort of venue for that, because, again, it wouldn't be something I would have a lot of fun with by myself, playing this kind of storytelling game solo. But since I'm recording it, putting it online, hey, that's a great opportunity for this. And I sort of just felt like doing something fun and creative like that. And we're also going to be showcasing a couple other things. So one thing we're going to be showcasing is, obviously we have the official cooperative variant set up, but we're going to be using a variant that was created by Board Game Geek user Mr. Honeycut. So I will put a link in the video description to Mr. Honeycut's the thread where he introduces this variant, and he says he loves to play this way solo, so we're going to give this a try. In addition to that, we're going to be using the theme cards, and that's going to go along with the thing I'm going to talk about how I like to play these kind of word games. And we're going to be using these power cards, which is basically to give every player individual player powers. Now that's going to make the game a little easier, and to sort of compensate for that, I'm using Mr. Honeycut's variant, and I think I'm also going to use another slight variant on the cooperative rules. So before we get too deep into it, let me give you a quick 10 million mile overview of how the game works. I'm really not going to get into the nitty-gritty because I'm wanting this to be a bit of a shorter video, but I want to give you a broad overview of how the game works, and how the official cooperative variant is, and then I'll explain these other variants we're adding on. Okay, so in the game of Paperback, it's not really clear who the players are supposed to be, but there is a theme kind of behind the game, and it's this author, this struggling novelist, Paige Turner. And you can see she's featured in this card here, working very hard, sitting on a stack of books because she can't afford furniture, got her typewriter propped up on a crate. And she is a struggling novelist, as I said, and she's writing in every single genre out there, every genre under the sun, just as long as she can make a quick buck. But she really loves the work she does, and according to the box, She loves the stories she writes and secretly wishes she could live them. And we can see that sort of cleverly included in the artwork, where all of their stories have a female protagonist somewhere in there, and they are always, if you look closely, probably actually Paige Turner. So I guess in the game we're playing as Paige Turner, or we're playing as competing novelists who are all sort of in her situation. It's not really clear, but let's just say that we're playing as Paige Turner. And the way that this game works is every turn you're going to try and make some words. So you're going to have a hand of cards. And with this cards, you're going to try to build some words. So for instance, I have the letters L, N, and T, and then I have 2 fame cards. And fame cards usually are represented by the books that she publishes, the book covers, and they act as wilds, so they could be any letter. So if I have the letters L, N, and T, like so, I could, for instance, throw in a fame card right there, and I could make the word lint. Easy enough. I could also make the word lent, although some people might consider that not a proper play, as lent is a proper noun. Let's see what else I could make with these letters. Is there anything to be gained from doing this? Let's see. Talon. All right. So now I've got a 5-letter word, T-A-L-O-N. So again, these wild cards really mix up the game, and they make it a lot less restrictive than other word games. So for instance, I can make the word Talon. Okay, so that would be my turn. It's usually a good turn if you can play all the cards in your hand. Now, after you've played your card, you do a couple of things. You check on the length of the word. And if you have, for instance, one of these letters, one of these cards that are actually 2 letters, those count as 2 letters, but it also only counts as 1 card. So you're checking for 2 things. You're wanting to make a very long word, and you're also wanting to make a word with a high value. So first thing I'm going to do is check on the length of my word. Talon is 5 letters. I count these wild cards toward my length, but I don't count them toward the value of my word. But for now, it's a 5-letter word, which means I'm going to check up here. And you're trying to gain these common cards. And to get a common card, I need 7 letters. And these common cards are pretty useful over the course of the game, and also not very big deal in the cooperative game, but in the competitive game, they're worth 5 fame points. And fame points are sort of your victory points at the end of the game. Just like in the game of Dominion, you're trying to get these cards into your hand. So I could, for instance, if I had a 7-letter word, I could grab this space bar, and I could use that for the rest of the game. But as it is, I only have a 5-letter word. Nobody's going to get more than 5 letters in the early game. So I would then go to use the powers on my cards. And you can see that all of these different cards out here, well, some of them have special powers on them. Some of them don't. So for instance, this one, the N, is plus 2 cards in your next hand. This one is double your word score, but then you have to trash this card after use, which trash is just remove it from the game completely. So you have all of these different cards that could give you various powers. So the next thing you do is check the powers on your cards and fulfill those powers. Then after that, you're going to add up the value of your hand. So I've played this word Talon. It's got 5 letters, but only 3 of those letters have any value. The value is in the top left corner right underneath the letter itself. So it's 1, 2, 3. And that word would be worth 3 cents. If you ever worked as a writer, you should know that getting paid 3 cents for one word is actually pretty good. A lot of writers get paid maybe, a cent a word, or if that. But she's getting paid 3 cents for this one word, Talon. It's a really good word. The editors love this one. So with those 3 cents, I can purchase any cards that are out here. So as you can see, the cards have their cost over in the bottom left, and this is just like any other deck builder, like Dominion or any other game like that, where I can spend my cents, my money, to buy cards. So I would be able to get something from the 2-cent pile or the 3-cent pile. The 2-cent pile has your very, very important little vowels in it, but they are one-time use cards. You have to trash them after you use them the first time. Whereas the 3-cent pile has some pretty weak but fairly decent abilities. We get all the way over to 8 cents and 9 cents in this rightmost pile, which have very high value, but maybe less easy to use letters like X and V, which would be worth 4 or 5 cents just for using that letter. But let me explain the goal of the game, which is really to get these fame cards. Remember, she's trying to write books and she's trying to become famous. So these fame cards represent the books that she actually is able to publish. Or maybe not. Maybe they're just her fantasies of publishing. So these fame cards have costs just like other cards. You put them into your hand, but they've got fame points. They don't contribute toward the value of the word you play. So they actually are just like these starting cards in your hand, these starting wild cards. They act as wild cards, but they don't contribute to their word's value. But it's essential that you get them to win the game, because that's your score at the end of the game, is the total value of all your fame cards in your deck. In the cooperative game, instead of having the fame cards in various piles based on their value, and having there just be a set number of fame cards and you end the game when you've got all the common cards or all the fame cards, instead of that, you create this pyramid here. And we're trying to get all of the fame cards before a certain number of cubes appears on any specific card in the pyramid. Now, I can only buy cards that are revealed. So at the beginning of the game, only the bottom 4 cards are revealed. In order to reveal, say, the Dead Planet card from here, I would need to buy both of these cards and completely uncover it. So there's that kind of complication. In addition, every turn that you don't buy a fame card, you have to put a cube out on one of the revealed cards. You can't put it on the card back here, that's cheating, but you have to put a cube on one of these revealed cards. And these cubes build up over the course of the game, and as I mentioned, the goal is to try and get these fame cards before they get a certain number of cubes on them. The rules recommend 5 cubes. 5 cubes would be the game losing condition. So they can have up to 4. You get your 5th cube out, you're going to lose. I think I'm going to try playing with 4 cubes just to make it a little bit more difficult. But we'll see. If this seems like way too tough, the game's going to be over too early, we'll shift back and do 5 cubes. It's actually very easy to make that shift because obviously either the game ended or it didn't end yet. Okay, and I'm going to explain Mr. Honeycut's variant. So yeah, let's do that. Okay, but let me explain Mr. Honeycut's variant. And this is very simple, very straightforward, but it has the potential to make the game very interesting. So in his variant, every time you put a cube out on a card, it doesn't just go toward that game losing condition of having 4 or 5 cubes on a card and then you lose. It also increases the cost of the card. So at the beginning, all of these cards on the bottom row cost 5 cents. But as I put cubes out on them, they're going to cost 6 cents, and then they're going to cost 7 cents, and then they're going to cost 8 cents, and then I think by the time they cost 9 cents, that's going to be the end of the loss of the game. So we're going to try this variant. This is actually my first time playing with this variant, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see how it works out through the course of this video. As I mentioned, I might dial back the other difficulty if I think that it's going to be too difficult in combination with this variant. We're also going to be playing with 2 hands. Now, there's no reason you can't play the solo game with 1 deck of cards. You just basically play the cooperative rules, but play with 1 deck of cards. However, I enjoy playing deck building games with multiple decks. And the reason for that is when you play a deck building game and you just got 1 deck, and there's nobody else buying cards from the center row, it kind of feels like your deck has to be, especially the cooperative deck building games, it kind of feels like your deck has to be a jack of all trades, and it doesn't feel like you really get to specialize down one path. But if you're playing multiple decks, like I'm going to be playing with 2 decks today, then you get to kind of say, okay, this deck is going to focus on longer words, and this deck is going to focus on those high value cards, or this deck is going to focus on trashing and really optimizing my starting hand, and this deck is going to focus on something else. And with this game, it's a very interesting take on deck building, because not only are you going to focus on the abilities on the cards, obviously, but you're also going to focus on the letters, because a deck that has AR and, let's say, M and ED, well, you could make the word armed anytime you draw all of those cards into your hand. And maybe you get also the S in there and a D, and you could make the word disarmed. And then you can just keep making those really high-scoring words. But if I got some letters that didn't go together, X, B, P, and D, let's say, X, B, P, and V, what kind of word can you make with that? Probably something if you thought long enough, but I don't have that kind of time. Do you have that kind of time? Nobody has that kind of time. So, it's going to be, I think, more fun for me and for you as viewers to sort of have two decks going simultaneously, and we'll kind of build onto these and these and try and go different directions with them. The other thing is that this cooperative variant, the official one, is not very well tuned to different player counts. It's basically the same difficulty no matter how many players you have. Well, I guess I said that wrong. It doesn't change based on how many players you have, so the difficulty gets tremendously harder the more players you have. Solo games, if you play with just one deck, tend to be pretty easy. Two-player tends to be, from what I've read on the forums, pretty good balance. Three-player can be pretty tough, and four-player could be almost impossible to play this cooperative game. And then five-player, why would you even try? So, as I mentioned, there's a bunch of different things that people have suggested on Board Game Geek to play this game solo with just one deck and balance out the difficulty. We're going to be playing with two decks instead, so we completely kind of get around that problem. And with Mr. Honeycut's variant, it should be a little bit more challenging anyway. And finally, let's talk about these other variants that we're going to mix in. Now, this game, Paperback, comes with a lot of extra stuff in the box. It's very modular in that way. One of the things that it has, for instance, it's got attack cards, which you're not going to be using in this game. It's got variable player powers, which we will be using in this game. It's got award cards. You gain this award at the end of the game if you have the most vowels in your hand, or if you have the most high-value consonants, or whatever, or your most two-letter cards in your hand. We're not going to be playing with those, because those are really only useful if you're going to be counting up fame points at the end of the game. We will be playing with these variable player powers, and that's going to kind of offset some of that extra difficulty that Mr. Honeycut's variant's going to pull in. So hopefully it should be just right, just perfect difficulty level. So I'm going to basically deal one of these to each quote-unquote player, and we'll see what we come up with. Okay. So the player left is going to be a Ghost Rider. Once per turn, after drawing, if you reveal a hand with 4 or more wilds, draw a card. So she's going to want to be getting a lot of wild cards, or maybe trashing cards that aren't wild. That's a pretty fun ability, especially as she's trying to gather these fame cards. And then let's see. Stuck key over here. Once per turn, if the word has 3 or more wilds, plus 1 cent. Now that's interesting. They're both sort of competing for wilds. There's other cards we could have gotten. Once per turn, you may copy a letter in your word. Copied letter does not score or have an ability. Wilds and 2-letter cards cannot be copied. Once per turn, if word has no wilds, plus 1 cent. And once per turn after drawing, if you reveal a hand with no wilds, draw a card. So we have 2 cards that are really good with wilds, 2 cards that are really good with no wilds, and then this really interesting kind of curveball plagiarism card. But we'll just play with the powers we got dealt, which are Stuck Key and Ghost Rider. And then we're going to play with the theme. And this kind of gets into the major variant that I want to play with. So the theme cards are used in the multiplayer game. Basically, you get this theme card put in front of you if you play a word that everyone at the table agrees fits the theme. And these are basically different genres. Then, if you have the theme card at the end of the game, if someone else hasn't stolen it from you by playing another word that fits the theme, then you get some extra points. We're going to play it a little differently. We're going to shuffle up these theme cards. We're going to choose a random theme. And we're going to kind of tell a story as we play. very loosely. But every word that I make, I'm going to kind of fit it into an ongoing narrative based on one of these themes. So we have dystopian, crime, pirate, paranormal, western, or sci-fi. All of the themes from the books that Page Turner actually published. So we're going to pick one at the beginning of the game, and then every word that I play, I'm going to make that word part of a sentence or a couple of sentences that adds on to the ongoing narrative. Now, some of these words might not actually fit very closely with the theme, but by kind of tying it into that, that narrative that was started from the theme, I hope to create kind of a fun little story as we play. Okay, so got the theme cards here. We're going to shuffle on up. We're going to pick one at random, and we'll see what we end up with. All right, we'll give it a quick shuffle, and we'll just grab this one. Crime. I'm actually going to veto this